We're going to head into our lightning talks. And first up, we do have Mitch. So I will turn over to Kavika to give Mitch an introduction and just what his talk is going to be about.
Thanks, Shilpi. It was a very amazing talk. I really enjoyed it. So next in line, we have Mitch Parish. He is a security consultant at Trusted Sec. Mitch has spent over 8 years at the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, focusing on physical infrastructure security. He now helps organizations secure the development and delivery environments through continuous security and secure software development and the adoption of DevSecOps principle. He is a Sync ambassador as well, and primarily focuses on security and DevSecOps. So welcome, Mitch. And his talk is based on MacGyverOps, secure your development environment with the tools around you. I'll hand it over to Mitch.
Welcome, Mitch.
Over.
Welcome to DevSecOn.
Yeah.
And I must say, I love the title of your. Are you a big MacGyver fan? Is that one
nice.
of your favorite shows?
Yeah, and it's so relevant, and I thought we could have some fun with it and make it relatable instead of kind of the humdrum, the normal thing. So I've got some good memes sprinkled throughout here as well.
We all need some memes.
Yeah, we're gonna enjoy it.
For sure. I'll pop over your slide deck across as well, and we'll just hide over in the background. So we'll let you take it away, and I'm looking forward to this.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. Great to be here, DevSecOn. I am in the US, so it's a little late for me, but looking forward to it. So yeah, MacGyverOps, securing your development environment with the tools around you. Thought I'd have a little fun with MacGyver. I'm obviously not Angus MacGyver, but there he is. For those not familiar, MacGyver was the star of a action series in the 80s. There was a reboot I found out when I was doing some meme research. Don't waste your time with that one. Watch the original one from the late 80s, early 90s. MacGyver was known for getting in situations that he needed to escape, and he would do so with anything he could find around him. He was the king of improvisation. He would use paper clips as the famous one, duct tape, anything that he could find in his environment to get himself out of a bind. So in that spirit, I wanted to talk about finding solutions to security problems with the tools you already have. The talk is primarily targeted towards smaller shops looking to increase security throughout the development and DevSecOps lifecycle. But with some of the tools and platforms I'll be highlighting, hopefully everybody will be able to take something away from it. So again, I'm not Angus MacGyver. There we go. There's me. Mitch Parish. I'm a security consultant at Trusted Sec. We're a full service cybersecurity consulting firm. There I focus on cloud security and DevSecOps. Super exciting. Never a dull moment. Really love it there. You can follow me. I don't tweet a lot, but I'm on Twitter, GitHub, @Viga. Awesome. So kind of the meat of the talk here. Everybody's familiar with, or at least most people are familiar with, the DevOps periodic table. It's kind of this mishmash of tools. Not all of them security related, but it does do a good job at highlighting just how many tools were presented for the problems that we face. So it's a bit overwhelming. There's a million tools. Like, how do we pick? What do we do? Essentially, an individual tool or platform for every use case, and as I say, useless case, kind of some nonsense ones always mixed in there. Oftentimes, organizations pick a tool for whatever reason, check a box. They never actually do anything with the feedback from the tool. They never fully implement the tool in their development workflow, so it doesn't become a valuable source of information. That feedback loop is never closed. Essentially, we've adopted a platform. The alerts go somewhere nobody knows, and we're doing security. So this talk kind of focuses on getting away from that idea and maybe looking around you and saying, hey, we've already got this tool. Can we leverage it in a way to increase security? Additionally, something I like to focus on, a lot of these tools pull developers out of their typical development workflow. They have to go to a SaaS platform or 10 SaaS platforms or other web UIs. that really drags efficiency down. So if you can at all, when you're looking at tools to bring in, stay within the developer workflow, so that they're within an environment they're familiar with. They don't have to jump around. It'll really drive efficiency, and it will also get you some buy-in from your developers and from everyone involved. That hey, we can take this feedback, apply it quickly, remediate quickly. Super important. And a lot of people I know when they're evaluating tools don't necessarily take that into account. They're looking more for, slick marketing or feature set or something else. So if there's one thing you take away from this talk, please let it be that. Developer experience is hugely important. They're your primary, essentially, clients or customers that you're trying to build and implement this tool for. So look at it that way. They're the consumer. If it's something outside of their workflow, they're probably not going to want to use it, or they will grudgingly. It's the first meme. I'll talk a little bit about threat modeling, just because before we can talk about increasing security through the development lifecycle, we kind of need to figure out what we're protecting against, and come up with some degree of prioritization so that we know what we're solving for. Threat modeling scares a lot of people. They think it has to be highly structured. It doesn't. It doesn't need to be, necessarily a huge formalized process. It can be, especially if you're a smaller organization, it can be discussions centered around your sprint reviews. It can be during feature development, just having the discussion, identifying the potential risk, and then performing some type of basic quantification of the probability will really help you go a long way, not only in feature design, but in looking for tools that will help you drive efficiency and drive security. To go out and buy or procure tools without first, figuring out what you actually need a tool for is sort of backwards and gets a lot of people in that broken feedback loop that I talked about earlier. So just these are the basic questions from the threat modeling manifest. So if you're a small org, this is pretty much what you need. Gear's law, I'm not sure, this is attributed to Dan Gear, the computer scientist. It's obviously influenced by Clarke's three laws. I like it. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about metrics because we don't have a ton of time. But just know that if you're not measuring, how do you know where you're at? So before you make any changes, you need to implement some basic metrics. It could be anything from mean time to remediation, deployment frequency, lead time to changes, some type of measurement or metric that once you introduce those additional tools or processes, you can go back and say, well, this slowed us down, this speeded us up, sped us up. That's late here. Yeah, definitely, like I said, not going to get too deep in the woods here, but make sure you're measuring, to some degree. All right, so we're back to the periodic table. We're about to jump into the tools. I wanted to bring this back to you so you could remember, look at all these tools. Where do we start? For this lightning talk, I wanted to focus on 3 platforms that I would say, 80% of the folks out there have or are using. Obviously, your version control system, GitHub for source code management, and AWS for a cloud platform. All right, let's jump right in. So again, these are tools that you already have that you can leverage to increase security throughout the development environment with a focus on, we say shift left as a marketing term, but early in the development process, the goal being to reduce the time of remediation, the cost of remediation by identifying vulnerabilities earlier. So GitHooks. Look, that's on the developer laptop. That's about as far left as you can get. Pre-commit, pre-receive hooks. They're super useful. You can pretty much do anything with them. You can extend your branch protections. You're probably doing this in GitHub already, but you can extend that out to GitHooks. You can do syntax format testing, secrets inclusion testing, unit testing, all of your asks. your application security testing, software composition analysis, and your infrastructure as code testing. So we really stress performing these tests as early as possible in the development environment to give that instant feedback to developers so that they can, hey, I'm going to try and commit this, run some tests. Oh, that doesn't work. I can remediate it before it's even included in your code base. Super, super helpful. Again, on the right side is the feedback column. Like I said, I like to focus on developer experience and feedback within the development workflow. So there's an example there if you can see it, just essentially blocking a commit or a push. We're running short on time, so I'll cruise through these. This is a very basic version of Git signing. There's obviously multiple tools, multiple ways to do this. I just wanted to bring it up. Git signing, you can Git sign tags and commits. Commits sometimes is a bit heavy for some development shops to just dive right in with commits. So if you're releasing via tag, kind of depending on your strategy for CI/CD and releasing, just know that when you sign a commit, you are creating attestation with the caveat of it's only as reliable as your key management strategy. So if you're letting developers, or if you as a developer managing your own GPG keys, know that you have to secure those. If those are compromised, then it kind of takes us out of the equation. Focus on GPG over SSH. GitHub allows both. GPG does allow for expiration and to revoke them. Again, feedback, local development environment, commit or push is blocked, and you can also see it in the GitHub UI. So moving over to GitHub, again, Git signing tags and commits, the same attestation. Whoa, typo down there in the management strategy. You can do branch protection with these. GitHub has released a lot of new features around Git signing, so I encourage you to check them out. Protecting branches, if a commit is not signed, no go on that. It's automatic on the web UI. If you're editing a README or whatever, you shouldn't try not to do that in the web UI. But if you do, GitHub's automatically signing that for you. And then I also wanted to mention the ability for to add an organization SSH certificate authority to GitHub. And there you can see the feedback right in the GitHub UI, so the developer is not having to leave their environment or workflow. Dependabot, enable it. Know that it's not perfect. Understand the limitations of it. If you are on GitHub, go on there, make sure that Dependabot works for your programming language. Make sure you're using lock files, because that's what's going to work the best, especially for transitive dependencies. But essentially, Dependabot kind of works as a sort of an SCA tool, software composition analysis. It'll give you your dependencies, your transitive dependencies. Again, no, it's not perfect. It's getting better. Something to definitely take a look at. Another tip for this one, I would say make sure you're prioritizing alerts based on most important. GitHub does a good job at not just saying critical, critical, critical at the top. They do some evaluation of whether or not you're calling a vulnerable function or not, and some additional things. So keep that in mind. Don't always sort by severity level. Code owners, super helpful. Kind of extends branch protections. Essentially sets requirements for pull requests based on ownership. So you can be really granular in your code reviews. You can say if there's an IAC folder within a project, the operations team or the cloud engineering team must approve this. If there's also some additional static website code in there, it goes to the application team. So really allows for some super granular code reviews built into GitHub. You put a code owner's file in the root of your project, super helpful. Again, feedback in the GitHub UI, recommend, Slack, Jira, and the GitHub audit log is also super powerful. GitHub Actions. Most people are probably super familiar with this. This is GitHub CI/CD. Again, you can do all of your testing here. Your application security testing, SCA, infrastructure as code. You can also do secrets discovery. Look for verified marketplace partners. GitHub reaches out and verifies those partners. So I would start there if you're using any third-party actions. And then you can also use built-in capabilities with the platforms you're already using. So they're thinking of Docker Scan and Docker SBOM. Docker SBOM is a experimental feature, so just know that it'll be changing all the time, and there might be some hiccups there, but that'll be a super powerful thing too, to be able to provide at least that initial bill of materials for your container images back in the GitHub UI. Jump back over here. Sorry, I'm going to rush through these. This is the lightning talk. AWS, Elastic Container Registry, some super nice built-in features. Scan on push included. So if you're using ECR for your container image registry, you're already getting that scan on push. The enhanced scanning through Amazon Inspector, that'll do continuous scanning. Anytime a new vulnerability is added to the database, it'll scan your images again. Another couple features that I always like to point out to folks that I see they don't get used a lot: lifecycle policies and cross-region and account replication. Especially if you're doing enhanced scanning, you're getting charged for every container image that's being scanned. So if you've got a production account on AWS or a production registry, I would keep the minimal amount of images you need to be able to roll back and meet your SLAs. And then I would either use lifecycle policies to get rid of those images and clean them up, or I would also use cross-account or region, cross-region or account replication, store those images for historical reasons, and not scan them. There's no reason to be paying for image scans of images that you're not currently using. And again, feedback console, CloudWatch, and EventBridge, super powerful. You can pretty much send those anywhere. Inspector, again, kind of mentioned that with the container image scanning. AWS is working really hard on expanding Inspector. Recently, they've included Lambda functions, which will scan your Lambda functions during initial deployment and also continuously. EC2 for software vulnerabilities as well. And this support for Inspector is at the AWS organizations level. So super easy to set up, cover all of your accounts. But do be aware that there are some operating system and language limitations. So again, when you turn a feature on, you want to make sure first that your tech stack is covered, that your OS and language is covered by the feature. Right. Macy, again, another sensitive data discovery tool. You can scan your objects at time of ingestion or continuous. Know again that this one is can get expensive. So I would definitely recommend doing it on a bucket by bucket level, not doing your entire account, especially for the if you have continuous scanning set up. You're really going to see the cost, especially if you're a data-heavy organization. If you've got some big buckets. For the development world, if you're looking for secrets inclusion, like API keys or stuff like that, I would limit it to the buckets that you're using to store static websites or any other application code. Cool. Code pipeline, same thing as GitHub Actions. Obviously, it's a CI/CD platform, so super extensible. You can do all of your testing here. Again, Docker Scan, Docker SBOM, good examples of leveraging technologies you're already using and pull that feedback back into the development workflow. And again, for all these AWS services, the console, if you unfortunately happen to be in there, but CloudWatch, EventBridge, I always recommend leveraging this, especially for code pipeline and for GitHub Actions. Like, you want visibility on your builds. If a build happens at 2 a.m. and it's never happened before, it's nice to know, to have some visibility on that. Unless you're deploying 1,000 times a day, it would get annoying, but most folks aren't doing that. So the too long didn't watch. Snuck a Jurassic Park meme in there. Had to do it. Implementing security in your development workflow in your DevSecOps or DevOps lifecycle. It's not a race, but it's not a race. So basically, you want to get over the fence. You don't want to be caught on the fence. So, pay attention, spend the time and effort on focusing on these things. And again, just to recap, know what you're solving for, threat modeling, knowing your applications, move with intention and measure things. That's the metrics bit. How do you know what you've done if you're not measuring? And investigate your existing capabilities before you go out and buy something new or add some complexity that might not necessarily be needed. Always do that. And then again, feedback within development or developer workflow. Cannot stress that enough. You don't want to put these tools in place just to have your developers ignore it. So that is my number one tip. And then finish up with MacGyver himself. I'll let you read that. If you have any questions or anything at all, always feel to reach out at me on Twitter at Viga. There's also, I linked way back here, if you do like tools. I do maintain an absurdly large list of DevOps tools here on GitHub, so.
Thank you so much for that, Mitch. That was amazing. And I think that's such a creative way of actually keeping all the tools as well. Though I must say, if anyone's done schooling and you're looking at periodic tables, always gives you a bit of jitters. At least this is one I don't have to remember.
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
Yeah, but I think this is definitely a much more fun periodic table for sure. But thank you so much. That was such an interesting talk, and I definitely did enjoy your memes as well. We may just go to one quick question. I think we did get one from Sham from Hopkins. He's just saying, what are the best practices or pointers to introduce DevSecOps tool chain for existing DevOps CI/CD pipeline?
I would say I would go back to this and say move with intention and measure things, right? So go slow. Don't throw a bunch of stuff in there all at once. Measure your output, I would say. Don't add anything that's not going to be of value and that you can't see returned every day in every build. Because if you're not, then what's the point?
Definitely. No, I love that. That's a really it's a very holistic way of looking at things. And often it's not just about, tools and other things. It's just about, as you said, move with intention. I think that should be the motto for today.
Exactly. Yeah. You just need to step back and look at the big picture. It's hard sometimes.
Thank you so much for this, Mitch. I think the hard part about lightning talks is you always want them to go for so much longer. So
I know.
Really a best, a really good taster for, these things. And we loved your memes. So thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to throw over to Kavika just to introduce our next guest. But thank you so much, Mitch. And thanks for joining DevSecOn.
Thanks, guys.